Liberal Fox News commentator Jessica Tarlov celebrated a powerful new ad from the Biden campaign exposing the devastating consequences of Donald Trump's war on reproductive rights. And she mocked Trump and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham for their public infighting on this very topic. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, so we have a couple of clips to look at in this video. The situation is this. Republicans understand that the issue of abortion is devastating to them electorally. They planned and plotted and schemed for years, decades, since Roe v. Wade was enacted in the 70s. They've schemed for decades to overturn it by packing the federal judiciary and then ultimately the Supreme Court with enough religiously conservative justices that would overturn that precedent. In July 2022, they got their wish with the Dobbs decision thanks to 3 appointments made to the Supreme Court by Donald Trump. Now, the aftermath of this has been a slate of devastatingly restrictive abortion laws, which have endangered women all across this country. And electorally, Republicans have paid the price. They effectively lost the 2022 midterms. As a result, they effectively lost the vast majority of the 2023 off-year elections. Democrats, liberals, and progressives have made enormous progress in previously unthinkable situations, and every time abortion has been on public referenda, even in deep red states like Kansas and Kentucky, Republicans have lost, okay? So they understand that this is a serious risk for them. Accordingly, Donald Trump is lying again. He's like, listen, sure, I'm proud to have effectively killed Roe v. Wade. Sure, I have flirted and hinted more times than not that I would support or sign a national abortion ban. But you know what? I mean, we really need to leave it to the states. That's the context for this public announcement. Obviously, it goes without saying before I play this first clip, nobody should take Donald Trump at face value. He'll say one thing on Monday and the complete opposite on Wednesday just to benefit himself electorally. So that's the context. And this is what Jessica Tarlov has to say.
And I should note there's a very powerful Biden campaign ad that just came out this afternoon about a young woman in Texas, wanted pregnancy, miscarriage at 18 weeks, could not get the care that she needed, ended up in sepsis, and doesn't know if she will be able to conceive again. The Democrats are fully on the right here to be using these very real stories about women who want these pregnancies. And we know that 60% of abortions are given to women who actually have had children before, facing catastrophic circumstances often. And Donald Trump is scrambling, and now he's just going to spend all night going after Lindsey Graham for coming out there for the 15-week ban again.
So we're going to get to what she just said there about Donald Trump and Lindsey Graham, because that's hilarious. But she mentioned this very powerful ad coming from the Biden campaign, and I want to play it for you now, and again, we'll unpack it together.
So this is one of our willow boxes. This is just filled with some of the things that we had started gathering for her while I was pregnant.
Yep.
Here's her little baby book. This is the outfit that she was gonna maybe wear home from the hospital. All of these. This is the blanket that she was in. And these are her little footprints.
It's okay.
That is a devastating ad. The Biden campaign has been enormously effective on the advertising and social messaging front, and this is the latest one. This might be the most memorably devastating and effective ad, and it was dropped shortly after Donald Trump, again, lied to the American people and straddling both worlds, suggesting he's proud to overturn Roe v. Wade and he supports states' rights to enforce these absurdly restrictive and punitive and cruel anti-abortion laws like the one that we just saw in that ad. But also, you know, he doesn't want to support any sort of national ban. That's what he says, right? Again, even though he's flirted with it in the past. Now, nobody, as I said in the beginning, should take Donald Trump at face value here. He's a pathological liar and a malignant narcissist, and he's clever enough to understand that this is a devastating issue for him. So he's trying to tepidly walk this tightrope in a way that won't hurt him politically. Now, Lindsey Graham is furious about this. Lindsey Graham is one of the few Republican senators who, in the immediate aftermath of the Dobbs decision, just blurted out to the American people stupidly that he wants a national abortion ban, right? He is one of the few who's been consistent about it from the beginning and open and upfront about it, even when other Republicans were telling him to shut up, that now isn't the time. Because, again, they have to traffic in dishonesty about this because they know it hurts him politically. So he dropped this this tweet, and he says, "I respectfully disagree with Trump's statement that abortion is a states' rights issue. Dobbs has not required that conclusion legally, and the pro-life movement has always been about the well-being of the unborn child, not geography." Listen, this is really important here. I think he actually gives it away. And the pro-life movement has always been about the well-being of the unborn child. We'll come back to that. And so he complains about Trump's position on it being a states' rights issue. Now, obviously, Donald Trump is probably personally pro-abortion. I wouldn't be surprised to think that, you know, he has funded abortions with many of his mistresses and affairs in the past. It's just me speculating. But politically, he has been the foremost agent of anti-abortion rights because he is unprincipled. He doesn't even have like a religious principle in this. He just wants to win. He recognizes that the Republican Party and its cultishness is the primary vector by which he can win. And so he'll take it as far as the religious right wants him to. And then when he sees minefields along the way, he'll try to tiptoe through it and contradict himself. And because Lindsey Graham is now publicly disagreeing with him in a way that Trump feels is electorally disadvantageous, Donald Trump is pissed at Lindsey Graham. He says, "I blame myself for Lindsey Graham because the only reason he won in the great state of California is because I endorsed him." Probably the incumbent advantage helped too. But honestly, I mean, Lindsey Graham did face a pretty stiff competition back in 2020 against Jamie Harrison, who's now the head of the DNC. And it's entirely possible that that Graham would have lost if not for Trump's endorsement. But again, this public infighting is what Jessica Tarlov is talking about. Then she goes on to reference not just, again, the most powerful ad that we just saw, but also the story of Kate Cox, a woman from Texas that we've talked about on this channel as well, who was the subject of very punitive anti-abortion laws out of Texas. And the cruel Texas Supreme Court, Texas's cruel Attorney General Ken Paxton, who threatened to prosecute her loved ones if they attempted to get her an abortion. And that was before the Texas Supreme Court overruled a lower court decision basically revoking her right to have an abortion. A lower court said, "Kate Cox, listen, your life may be in danger here. You want an abortion, you can go get it. This is clearly a medical emergency." Then Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, said, "No, you can't do that. And if you try, we will prosecute you." And then ultimately the Texas Supreme Court sided with Ken Paxton against Kate Cox, forcing her to flee the state. So Jessica Tarlov makes reference to this and other very stringent, very cruel anti-abortion laws across this country.
He is allowing 14 states that ban it in all cases, including no exceptions for rape or incest. That's allegedly something that he opposes, but he's letting it happen. And there are 24 states that can't even get a ballot initiative out there. Yeah. So he's leaving people in dire straits, people like Kate Cox in Texas, who already had 2 children and then a non-viable pregnancy, and a 10-year-old in Ohio who had to go to Indiana to be able to get care.
So again, everything that Jessica Tarlov points out is perfectly accurate. It's perfectly fair to hold Donald Trump responsible as the leader of the Republican Party, as the cult leader of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, in terms of its elected officials, are infinitely more devoutly loyal to Donald Trump than anything we've seen from a political party and any political figure in modern times. He would probably have the clout that if he got on the horn to these Republican governors and said, "Do not pass these 6-week abortion bans or these no exception abortion bans," they would probably reverse course because they fear dear leader so much, and he's not doing it. So it's entirely fair. It's perfectly fair, perfectly good faith to hold him ultimately accountable for all of these terrible outcomes because he's the one leading the charge. And now he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. So I think it's great for Tarlov and others to point this out because, again, what Donald Trump is doing here is a cynical, transparent attempt simply to avoid electoral consequences ahead of the November election while it's relatively competitive between him and President Biden. I also want to circle back and conclude on this. So Lindsey Graham said in his tweet to Trump, let me pull it back up again, that he said the pro-life movement has always been about the well-being of the unborn child. I'm not entirely sure that that's true, right? Because again, we saw the situation with Kate Cox is a great example. So Kate Cox, part of her diagnosis, it was going to be fatal to the fetus, right? It wasn't like it was the fetus's health versus the mother's health. The fetus was determined it will die painfully, either in utero or out. That's why she wanted the abortion. And there would be a potential either long-term health risks to her, or potentially fatal to her, or potentially keep her from having kids in the future. So it was just an absolute mess. And it was the pro-life movement that forbid her from terminating the pregnancy and put everybody's life in jeopardy. But even if we grant the premise that the pro-life movement has always been about the well-being of the unborn child, doesn't Graham just give the game away there about the well-being of the unborn child? What about the born child? What about, see, the pro-life movement thinks that life ends at birth. They're so insistent. Oh, we got to protect the fetus. And as soon as it leaves the birth canal, they're peace. We're out. We're gone. We don't support robust social safety nets, pre and neonatal care, nothing like that. The Republican Party, in terms of its elected officials and conservative thought leaders, the only thing that brings them joy here is the notion of forcing someone to carry a pregnancy to term against their will. That's what they care about. That's it. Because if they were really pro-life, they would want to pour money and resources into pre and neonatal care and social safety nets and health insurance and things like that. But they don't. They just want to force people to carry pregnancies to term against their will and then throw them to the wolves. It's a powerful advertisement from the Biden campaign exposing the devastating consequences of Donald Trump's actions, and he should be held accountable for them in the November election. Let me know what you think in the comments.